A count mockingly asks a waitress for financial advice, but her knowledge shocks him. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. The bells on the restaurant door chimed softly each time someone entered, but Elise Moreau scarcely heard them anymore. The sound had become part of the air, like the murmur of voices and the clink of cutlery. She moved between tables with practiced ease, balancing a tray of porcelain plates on one hip, a bottle of wine in her hand. Her apron was clean, her hands were steady. Her thoughts, however, were far from calm. At the center of the room, near the tall windows and the polished mirror, sat the table everyone watched without appearing to. 4 gentlemen in dark coats and impeccable linen. Their chairs were set slightly apart from the others, as if the very wood recognized their importance. In that small circle of light, fortunes rose or fell with a word. The maitre d' had murmured their names before they arrived: Count Louis Beaumont, Baron Armand Durand, Monsieur Delacroix, Monsieur Fournier. Investors, industrialists, men who spoke of money with the same familiarity others reserved for family. They had ordered the best of everything. They had changed the atmosphere of the entire evening. "Elise," called Madeleine from behind the counter, "they want a second bottle of the Burgundy. Do not keep them waiting." "I will go at once," Elise answered softly. She took the bottle, wiped it quickly, and checked her reflection in the glass. No loose hair, no visible stain, no sign of the small storm inside her chest. She drew a breath and stepped toward the table. As she approached, snatches of conversation reached her. Figures, names of towns, mention of railways and steel foundries. She tried not to listen. Listening was dangerous. Listening had once taught her far too much. "The provincial factory is bleeding us." That was Monsieur Delacroix, his voice tight. "Another quarter like this, and the creditors will demand guarantees we cannot give." "We can sell it," Fournier replied. "Cut our losses. Put everything into the new line to the coast. There is still time. The English will not move as quickly as they claim." "And when prices fall further?" Durand asked. "What then? We will have burnt our last bridge for the pleasure of watching it collapse." The only voice that had not yet answered was Louis Beaumont's. Elise glanced at him briefly as she reached the table. He was younger than the others, perhaps in his early 30s. His dark hair was carefully groomed, his beard trimmed, his cravat perfectly tied. To any observer he was composed, even amused. But there was a faint line between his brows, a shadow that did not belong to an evening of fine food and laughter. She set the bottle down with a quiet tap. "Your wine, monsieur," she said. Louis lifted his glass without quite looking at her. "Thank you." Her hand brushed the bottle as she filled his glass. Her eyes flicked to the tablecloth, but her ears betrayed her and kept listening. "We cannot simply wait," Delacroix insisted. "The market does not forgive hesitation." Durand tapped a finger on the rim of his glass. "And it certainly does not forgive panic." "It does not forgive either," Fournier muttered, "when directors insist on sentiment over prudence." Elise's gaze slipped again toward the Count. Sentiment, she thought. That word had been thrown in her father's face once too. She stepped back to move away, but Delacroix caught her with a gesture. "Garçon, pardon, mademoiselle. The Count's glass is short." She returned, refilled the glass and felt the silence at the table shift. The men were no longer speaking. They were watching their own thoughts, measuring risks invisible to others. Louis lifted his eyes to her for the first time that evening. His gaze was clear, almost politely indifferent. Yet when it met hers, the indifference faltered, just for a heartbeat. He seemed to remember something, or forget something else. Then he smiled, the kind of smile men wore when they did not wish anyone to see their worry. "We sit here," he said, his tone light, "mourning over numbers like old widows over headstones. It is absurd." Fournier snorted. "I do not find bankruptcy amusing, Beaumont." "That is precisely why you need me," Louis replied with an airy gesture, "to provide you with amusement." "You may wish to amuse yourself less and listen more," Durand said dryly. The Count ignored the remark. His smile sharpened. He glanced at Elise, still holding the bottle. "You, mademoiselle," he said suddenly. "You have stood here for several minutes, have you not? You must have absorbed all our secrets by now. Tell me, what should we do? Should I sell my factories today, or wait until tomorrow to be ruined?" The question hung in the air. Delacroix laughed, a short, dismissive laugh. Fournier joined him. Even Durand's lips curved faintly. This was the kind of cruel jest men of their rank enjoyed, harmless in their eyes, at the expense of someone who could not answer back. Elise's fingers tightened on the bottle, though she did not spill a drop. Her cheeks warmed, but she did not lower her head. She had no choice but to stand there until they released her. She could smile, pretend to misunderstand, retreat. She lifted the bottle, intending to ask if they wished another glass. Louis tilted his head, watching her. "Oh, come now," he continued, the lightness of his voice concealing an underlying frustration. "Surely you have an opinion. Everyone does in Paris. Most of them are wrong, but they have them all the same." Madeleine flashed in Elise's mind. "Keep your thoughts to yourself," the older woman had said more than once. "These gentlemen pay for food, not for advice. They do not wish to hear your mind." The safest path was silence. Her tongue pressed against her teeth. Her eyes moved briefly from one face to another. Delacroix, whose name she had seen months ago in the financial columns. Fournier, whose speculation in coal had been the subject of a heated argument between two regular clients. And Baron Durand, whose sharp eyes never missed a movement, whose name had once been written in her father's notebook, in a hand that trembled. She could walk away. She ought to. "I have no opinion, monsieur," she began, her voice quiet. Louis's smile widened a fraction. "You disappoint me, not even a little one. If you were in my place, what would you do?" Delacroix chuckled. "She would ask for a raise, no doubt." Fournier murmured something that made the others smirk. Shame prickled along Elise's skin. She felt the old anger stir, the one she had tried to bury along with her past. She had listened to men like this ruin lives with a miscalculation or a shrug. She had watched her father walk the floor at night, whispering numbers under his breath while his clients slept comfortably, assured that misfortune would always fall on someone else first. She heard herself say very quietly, "If I were in your place, Monsieur le Comte, I would decide first what I wished to save, my pride or my grandfather's work." The laughter stopped. Fournier frowned. Delacroix's eyebrows rose. Durand's eyes narrowed with interest. Louis set his glass down. "That is a bold beginning," he said, soft amusement returning, though there was a new note in it. "Go on. You have started a sentence. You must finish it, or it will haunt my sleep." Elise realized, too late, that she had crossed a line. Yet now there was no retreat. Her heart beat fast, but her voice remained steady. She shifted the bottle to her other hand, more to give herself something to do than from necessity. "You speak of selling your provincial factory," she said. "If you do, you will give the impression that your enterprise is weaker than it is. Those who already doubt you will take it as proof. They will press you harder. Others will say you are abandoning the provinces, that you care only for the railway to the coast. It will not calm the market, it will feed its hunger." Delacroix leaned back, folding his arms. "What do you know of the market, mademoiselle?" "As much as anyone who reads the papers," she answered lightly, though her palms were clammy. "And as much as anyone who has watched fortunes vanish from one day to the next." Durand's gaze sharpened. Louis rested his elbows on the table, chin in his hands, as if listening to a story. "Very well. If we do not sell, what do we do? You should understand. There is not enough capital to support both the factory and the new line. We must choose." "You must not choose which one to save," Elise replied. "You must change the way both are seen. At present they seem like two separate beasts, each eating from your hand. You must make them appear as one. You must show that the line and the factory feed each other, that they are part of a single plan." "And how would you suggest we stage this miracle?" Delacroix asked, his tone edged with mockery. She glanced down at the tablecloth for a heartbeat, gathering courage. The patterns of the threads steadied her, simple and orderly. "You say the provincial factory is bleeding you," she began. "Then stop letting it bleed freely. Renegotiate your supply contracts there. Promise your suppliers stability, not high prices. Promise them you will keep the factory open and employ their sons if they give you better terms now. Everyone is afraid at the moment. They will accept less today for the hope of work tomorrow." Fournier scoffed. "You cannot simply ask men to accept less." "No," Elise said. "But you can show them that if you close the factory, they will have nothing at all. If you wish them to stay with you, you must show them you intend to stay with them." Durand exchanged a quick glance with Delacroix. Louis watched her, his expression unreadable now. That addresses only one side. What of the other? Our dear new line to the coast. She wet her lips. The restaurant had grown quieter around them. Nearby diners were now deliberately not looking while straining to catch every word. At present, everyone thinks you are building the line to gain a share in the foreign trade, she said. To compete with the English. That is ambitious, yes, but it is also risky. They think you are gambling. That is why they are nervous. So you must change the story. What story would you tell? Louis asked. That the line is not a wager, she answered, but a safeguard. That you will use it to transport your own goods from the provinces to the coast more efficiently. That by connecting your factory directly to new markets, you are ensuring its survival. Delacroix frowned slightly. But we have said nothing of the factory in any of our announcements. That is precisely why you must begin, Elise said. Publish a letter. Give an interview. Let it be known that you are not abandoning the provinces, but investing in them. That you will maintain production and even expand it once the line is complete. Investors do not like dreamers, monsieur. They like men who appear to have roots. Louis tapped his fingers together slowly. And in the meantime, while we tell these stories, what of the immediate pressure? Creditors are not soothed by words alone. No, she agreed, they are soothed by the fear of losing an opportunity. At present, they believe you must come to them, that you are at their mercy. Reverse that. Send someone, discreetly, to spread the idea that you intend to invite a foreign group to take a share in the new line. Do not say from where. Let people guess. The English, perhaps, or the Germans. Make it known that if your current creditors press you too hard, you will grant part of your future profits to others who are more patient. Fournier stared at her. You advise us to bluff? She met his gaze. I advise you to remind certain gentlemen that they are not the only men with money in Europe. Durand let out a short breath, almost a laugh, though his eyes remained cool. Louis's mouth curved slowly. This is fascinating, and if the creditors do not believe this rumor, they will, she said. They already fear foreign competition. They will not wish to be pushed aside, but even if they doubt, they will hesitate. Hesitation is time. Time to renegotiate. Time to breathe. Time to show that your plan is working. Delacroix's voice had lost some of its edge. You speak as if you have read our ledgers. That would be improper, Elise answered, allowing a small smile. I have simply heard bits and pieces. Men talk when they drink coffee. Fournier shook his head slowly. This is absurd. A waitress lecturing us on capital. She felt heat rise to her face, but before she could respond, Louis spoke, his tone mild. Absurd, yes, he said, and yet I have heard much worse advice from men who charged me dearly for it. A faint ripple of amusement passed over the table, quickly replaced by silence. Durand tilted his glass, studying the deep red wine. You speak of publishing letters and interviews, he said to Elise, and of spreading rumors that suit you. You seem to understand very well how our world works, too well for someone who carries plates and bottles. Her pulse quickened. Her throat felt suddenly dry. I read, monsieur, she said quietly. That is all. It is not all, Durand said. You mentioned rail contracts. You knew at once what factories we own. You spoke as if you had seen the agreements. I listen, she replied. Your guests speak freely when they think no one hears. Louis watched both of them. His eyes had lost their earlier lightness. There was concentration in them now, and something more personal. He looked as a man might look at a locked box he had assumed was empty, only to hear something move inside. Delacroix leaned in. Tell me, mademoiselle, what makes you so certain that suppliers will accept less, that creditors will hesitate? These are not things one learns from reading newspapers. Elise swallowed. Her fingers were numb around the neck of the bottle. The room felt suddenly closer, the air thicker. One does not need to be a banker, she said slowly, to know what a man will accept when he is afraid. And what has taught you so much about fear? Durand asked. His tone was light, but the question was not. Her mind raced. Images she had tried to bury rose at once. Her father at the dining table, the ink spreading across unpaid bills. The day the bailiffs came, the look on their neighbors' faces, the whispered name of the man who had escaped it all with his reputation untouched. She forced the images down. I grew up far from Paris, she said, in a house that was comfortable, and then it was not. My father made poor choices with money. We lost everything, that is all. Durand's gaze sharpened at the mention of a comfortable house and a ruined father. It was as if the shadows behind his eyes shifted, reaching for something half-remembered. Louis exhaled slowly. "So," he said, "you speak from personal experience." "In a manner of speaking," she murmured. He studied her for a long moment. Then he leaned back, folding his hands. "Well, gentlemen," he said to his companions, "what do you think? Shall we dismiss our unexpected advisor and return to despair, or shall we admit that she has given us at least some ideas worth considering?" Fournier frowned deeply. "This is ridiculous, Beaumont. We cannot base our future on the opinions of a... He stopped himself before finishing the sentence. "A woman," Louis provided, his voice even, "or a waitress. Which is more intolerable to you?" Fournier flushed. "On the opinions of someone who has no position in our affairs." Delacroix hesitated. "Her suggestions are not entirely foolish," he said. "They align with some measures we have already considered in part." Durand's lips twitched. "That may be what troubles Monsieur Fournier, to hear our own ideas improved by someone who brings our wine." Louis's eyes glinted for a moment, with something like satisfaction. He turned back to Elise. "Tell me," he said quietly, "why do you serve tables if you can speak like this? Why are you not advising someone like me for a living?" Her throat tightened. She did not wish to answer. All paths seemed unsafe. "I do what I can, monsieur," she said simply. "It is honest work." Durand put his glass down with deliberate care. "Honest work, certainly," he said, "but knowledge like yours does not grow in the kitchens of Paris. It comes from somewhere, from someone. You said your father made poor choices with money. Was he a gambler, a merchant, a banker?" Elise's hand trembled. A drop of wine slid down the neck of the bottle. Across the room, Madeleine shot her a nervous look, sensing the tension but unable to intervene. Louis noticed the trembling. His voice softened, though his curiosity did not. "You may answer or not as you wish," he said. "No one here has the right to question you as if you were on trial." But Durand was not so easily deterred. "On the contrary," he murmured, "I think we are entitled to know something of the person who has just advised us to change the entire course of our affairs. You may not be on trial, mademoiselle, but you have stepped upon the stage. Do not be surprised if people wish to see the rest of the play." Delacroix nodded slowly. "At least tell us your full name." Her heart pounded so loudly she was certain they could hear it. The urge to run was almost physical, yet her feet remained rooted to the floor. "My name is Elise Moreau," she said. Durand's eyes narrowed. The name seemed to disappoint him. It did not match whatever he had been searching for, yet his suspicion did not fade. If anything, it deepened. Louis repeated her name softly, as if tasting it. "Mademoiselle Moreau." He said it as though it meant something beyond what she had become. He studied her a moment longer. Then he spoke, his tone gentle but intent. "Mademoiselle Moreau," he said, "no one speaks as you do by chance. No one learns these things simply by pouring coffee and reading the papers. You know more than you claim. You understand our business in a way none of us expected when I chose to make my little joke." He paused, his gaze steady on her face. "Who are you really?" Elise could feel the weight of the question pressing on her skin. The four men watched her, each with his own brand of curiosity. For a second, the restaurant seemed too quiet, as if even the spoons had stopped moving. "I am no one of importance, Monsieur le Comte," she said at last. "Only what you see. A waitress." The answer hung between them, thin and unsatisfying. Delacroix clicked his tongue. "She is cautious. That alone should recommend her more than certain advisers we know," Fournier muttered. "You encourage this farce, Delacroix." But before Louis could reply, a discreet cough sounded at Elise's shoulder. The maitre d' had appeared, as if summoned by the rising tension. His expression was smooth, almost bland, but his eyes flashed her a warning. "Messieurs," he said warmly, "I hope everything is to your satisfaction. Mademoiselle, there is a service needed at the back. You are required." It was not quite a request. Elise gave a quick, stiff nod to the table. "Excuse me, monsieur." She turned and followed the maitre d' toward the far end of the room, feeling the weight of their gazes on her back. Only when they passed through the swinging door into the service corridor did she let out a breath. "What were you doing?" the maitre d' hissed under his breath as they walked. "Have you lost your mind?" "He asked," she replied, keeping her voice low. I answered. "You do not answer men like that," he snapped. "You smile and you step away. Do you want trouble?" She shook her head, though part of her thought, "Trouble has already found me." "I am sorry," she said. "It will not happen again." He eyed her sharply, then sighed. "You work well. Do not spoil it. He is a count. They are temperamental. Remember your place, Elise?" He departed to bark orders at a kitchen boy. She remained in the narrow corridor, gripping the empty bottle so tightly her hand ached. Remember your place. Once her place had been at a very different table, listening from the doorway while men drank coffee and discussed numbers. That place had been taken from her overnight. She lifted the bottle and went to the scullery, busying herself with small tasks, plates, glasses, trays, anything to occupy her hands until her thoughts settled. Back in the dining room, the conversation at the central table resumed, but it had changed. Voices were lower now, more careful. The men spoke of bonds, schedules, renegotiations. There was no more laughter. Every so often, when she ventured near another table, Elise felt Louis Beaumont's gaze flicker in her direction. Once their eyes met. He looked away quickly, his mouth a firm line. The hours slipped by. Courses came and went. Coffee was served. Chairs scraped. One by one the other diners paid and left, their evenings completed, their concerns small beside those of the four men who remained seated by the window. At last, Delacroix pushed his cup aside. "We are going in circles," he said. "There is no consensus." Fournier gave a short, impatient breath. "We cannot both hold the provinces and advance to the coast. It is impossible. Even a clever waitress cannot change arithmetic." "We will not decide in a single night," Durand said. "Let us review the matter with more information. The factories, the contracts, the creditors. We need exact figures." Louis nodded once. "I will have everything prepared." Durand gave him a level look. "See that you do, and be sure that no external voices are influencing you. Investors do not like surprises." The slight emphasis on the last word did not escape Louis. His jaw tightened. "Of course," he said. Chairs scraped back. Coats were collected. The men stood, smoothing their cuffs and adjusting their hats. They moved toward the entrance together, four dark silhouettes against the glow of the street lamps outside. Elise watched from near the counter, pretending to reorganize the dessert plates. She heard snatches of farewell. "Good night, Beaumont. Until Thursday. We will expect clarity, not charm, next time." The door chimed as they left, one by one. Baron Durand paused a moment to say something to Louis at the threshold. Louis answered in a voice too low for her to catch. Then Durand nodded and stepped out into the night. Only the Count lingered a little longer. He turned back into the quiet restaurant. Most of the tables were empty now. Madeleine was stacking napkins. The maitre d' was checking the account book. Louis scanned the room, then spoke quietly to the maitre d'. "I would like a word with the young woman who served our table," he said. "Mademoiselle Moreau. If she is not yet gone." The maitre d' hesitated, reading something in the Count's expression. "As you wish, Monsieur le Comte," he replied. "I will send her to the back office." He beckoned to Elise with 2 fingers. She approached, her heart suddenly loud in her ears. "The Count wishes to speak with you," the maitre d' said in a low voice. "In the office. Be respectful. Answer briefly. Do not argue. Do you understand?" "Yes," she whispered. She wiped her hands quickly, smoothed her apron and followed the narrow corridor to the small office at the rear of the restaurant. It was barely more than a room with a desk, a chair, and a cabinet of papers. The gas lamp on the wall cast a yellow circle of light. Louis Beaumont stood by the window, looking out at the dark courtyard beyond. He did not turn when she entered. "Close the door, please," he said. She obeyed, feeling suddenly very small in the confined space. He waited a few seconds, then turned to face her. Gone was the playful smile he had worn at the table. His expression now was more serious, almost tired. He studied her in silence for a moment, as if trying to reconcile the uniform she wore with the words he had heard earlier. "Mademoiselle Moreau," he began, "I owe you an apology." She blinked. That was not what she had expected. "An apology, monsieur," she repeated. "Yes." His mouth twisted faintly. "I asked for your opinion as a joke. I expected you to blush, perhaps to stammer and retreat. It was unkind. I was annoyed and I chose to amuse myself at your expense. That was not worthy of me." She lowered her eyes briefly. "I have heard worse, monsieur." "That does not excuse it," he said. "I misjudged you spectacularly." She gave a small, uncertain shrug. "Most people do not expect a waitress to speak of factories and railways." "Most people," he said, "do not find themselves advised by one." He gestured toward the single chair. "Please sit." She hesitated, then obeyed. It felt strange to sit while he remained standing, as if the positions of their world had tilted. For a moment he paced slowly, hands behind his back. Then he stopped and faced her. "You spoke earlier as if you had read our reports," he said, "our contracts, our letters, yet you claim you have not." "I have not, monsieur," she answered. "How would I? I only hear fragments. People talk." "There is talking," he said, "and there is analysis. What you did was not the first, it was the second." She swallowed. "I only put together pieces." He leaned a hip against the edge of the desk. "Let us say that is true. Even so, you put them together in a way most trained men cannot. You gave me in a few minutes the outline of a strategy that might actually work. That is not observation. It is skill." She clasped her hands tightly in her lap. "Skill is a luxury, monsieur. When one has no position, it is of little use." "That," he said quietly, "I no longer believe." Silence stretched between them. She could hear faint noises from the kitchen, the clatter of pans, the murmur of Madeleine's voice. In here, it was as if the outside world had paused. He watched her a moment longer, then asked more gently, "Tell me about your father." Her back stiffened. "I said too much at the table. That was a mistake. I did not mean to burden you with my history." "You did not burden me," he said. "You intrigued me, and you are right about one thing. I should not have asked. But now that I know there is a story behind your words, I would prefer to hear it from you than from gossip." She considered refusing, but refusing could make him suspect more, and there were things she could say without revealing everything. "My father advised others about investments," she began slowly. "He was not a great man, not a nobleman, but he was respected for a time. People trusted his judgment." Louis nodded slightly. "And then he made an error," she said. "He believed in a venture that failed. Others left before it collapsed. He did not. They lost money. Someone needed to be blamed. He was the easiest target." "Was he dishonest?" Louis asked quietly. "No," she said quickly. "Never. He was careless, perhaps, too hopeful. He was not greedy. But that did not matter once the rumors began." Louis's face softened a little. "And you saw this as a child?" She hesitated. "Old enough to understand what it meant when people stopped visiting. Old enough to understand when we had to sell the house." "So you watched your world fall apart," he said. "That is not an unfamiliar story in these times." "Perhaps not," she replied. "But when your world falls because of numbers on paper and the decisions of men in dark coats, you become very attentive to such numbers. You try to understand them so that next time you see the danger sooner." He regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and respect. "So you learned." "I tried," she said. "At first I listened. To my father, when he still received letters from old associates. To visitors before they stopped coming. Later in the city I read whatever I could borrow. Newspapers, bulletins, even discarded prospectuses left on tables by gentlemen who had finished their coffee. And all this," he said, "you did for what, to return to that world?" She shook her head firmly. "No, that world took too much from us. I did it so I would never be surprised again, so I would recognize the signs when something was about to break. And perhaps so that if I ever had a chance to prevent someone else from losing everything, I might not be useless." His gaze deepened. "That is what you tried to do tonight." She looked at her hands. "Perhaps. I did not like the way they laughed. At you, at me, at their own fear. It reminded me of something I prefer not to remember." He fell silent for a moment, thinking. When he spoke again, his voice was calmer, more practical. "Let us set aside how you obtained your knowledge," he said. "What matters now is what you proposed. I will not pretend your ideas are perfect. They need detail. We must see what contracts can actually be altered, which suppliers will listen, which creditors might be susceptible to hesitation. But the structure is sound." She nodded once. I spoke in broad strokes. That is all I can do with so little information. And that, he said, is precisely why I am going to ask you something that may shock you. She looked up, wary. What is that, monsieur? I want your help, he said simply. Not as a curiosity to be paraded in front of my associates. Not as a game. As an advisor. Quietly. Privately. I want you to help me shape a real plan from the outline you gave. Her breath caught. Monsieur, I am a waitress. I have no position, no education that anyone recognizes. If your associates discovered that you consulted someone like me, they would be scandalized, he finished. Yes, they might also be furious that I found something they did not. But their opinion is not my highest concern tonight. She stared at him, unsure whether to believe him. Why would you risk your reputation for this? She asked. Because my reputation will not matter, he said dryly. If my company collapses and I spend the rest of my life repaying debts, and because you have already given me more clarity than several expensive men I could name, I cannot afford to ignore competence simply because it is inconvenient. His eyes locked with hers. Will you help me? Her mind whirled. The offer was so far from anything she had imagined for herself that it almost seemed like a trick. What would you expect from me? She asked, buying time. I would arrange for you to meet me here or in another discreet place, he said. You would look over summaries I can provide. No confidential names at first, only numbers and general conditions. You would give your opinion. You would help me anticipate the reactions of suppliers and creditors. You would refine what you began tonight. And in return? She asked quietly. In return, he said, I will pay you, properly. Not as a charity, but as a fee. And I will keep your name secret. If anyone asks how I arrived at my strategy, I will say I considered the matter more deeply than before. That part, at least, will be true. She shook her head slowly, overwhelmed. They will suspect something. Men like Baron Durand do not like to be surprised. Already he looked at me as if he guessed too much. I noticed, Louis said. It is another reason I wished to speak with you. If he is suspicious, we must be careful. We? She repeated softly. Yes, he said. We. You are entangled in this now, whether you like it or not. My ill-timed joke saw to that. I would rather we faced it with some intention than leave you exposed. Her chest tightened. No one had spoken of her being entangled in anything except debts and misfortunes. To hear the word from his lips, linked to his own fate, unsettled her. And if someone discovers that you consulted me? She asked. What then? Then, he said calmly, I will say that any man who refuses wise counsel because of the hands that carry it is a fool. It will not win me friends, but it will be the truth. She looked at him closely, trying to detect mockery, arrogance, some sign that this was only another game for him. She found none. There was pride, certainly, and a kind of stubbornness, but also sincerity, and something else she did not dare name. Why do you care what happens to me? She asked suddenly. You could take what I said tonight and never speak to me again. No one would know. He was silent for a moment. Because, he said slowly, I have spent years moving among people who tell me what they think I wish to hear. Tonight, for the first time in a long time, someone who owed me nothing told me what she truly thought. It was bracing. I would not like to see that person ruined by my carelessness. His words struck deeper than she expected. She looked down quickly. You ask much, she murmured. I know. He paused, then added more gently, I do not ask for an answer this moment. Think about it. If you agree, send a note with the Maître D before Thursday evening. I will find a way to receive it without causing suspicion. She hesitated. And if I refuse? Then nothing changes, he said. You continue to serve tables. I continue to make decisions half-blind. No one will know that I asked. I will not trouble you again. That last part made something twist in her chest in a way she did not entirely understand. She lifted her head. I have one condition. His brows rose. Already negotiating. Very well. What is it? If I agree, she said, my name must not appear anywhere, not in letters, not in conversations with your associates. I have seen what happens when a name is dragged through papers and drawing rooms. I will not go through that again. His gaze sharpened at the last words. Again, he repeated. She cursed herself silently. Once was enough, she said quickly. For my family. He studied her, then nodded slowly. Very well, he said. If we do this, your name will not be mentioned. You will be, to everyone but me, an invisible hand. She gave a faint, humorless smile. I have been invisible most of my life, monsieur. At least this way there would be a purpose. He straightened, pushing away from the desk. Then we understand each other, he said. Think on it. And thank you, Mademoiselle Moreau, for tonight. He moved to the door and opened it for her. She rose, her legs slightly unsteady, and stepped past him into the corridor. The air outside the office felt cooler, sharper. She had the strange sensation of having crossed a threshold that was not marked by any visible line. As she started down the hall toward the main room, someone stepped into her path from the side. Ah, a smooth voice said. Mademoiselle. How fortunate. I was just about to depart and wondered if I might retrieve something I left behind. She turned sharply. Baron Armand Durand stood there, coat unbuttoned, gloves in one hand. He must have re-entered quietly through the front while she and Louis spoke. His eyes moved from her face to the open door of the office behind her, where the Count was still visible. I beg your pardon, monsieur, she said quickly, dropping her gaze. No need, he replied. His tone was polite, but his gaze was keen. You are quite the subject of the evening, you know. Your little speech has given us much to think about. Her stomach knotted. I spoke out of turn. It will not happen again. We shall see, he murmured. He studied her face more closely. A faint line appeared between his brows. There is something about you, mademoiselle. I could swear I have seen you before. What did you say your name was? For a moment Elise could not breathe. His eyes, sharp and measuring, stayed on her face. The narrow corridor felt even narrower. My name is Elise Moreau, monsieur, she said. I serve here at Le Cygne d'Or. Moreau, Durand repeated, tasting the word. Yes, you said as much at the table. He tilted his head, still searching her features. Strange. I could swear I have seen those eyes before, not here, somewhere quieter, a different dining room, a girl in the doorway who listened when she thought no one noticed. A chill ran down her spine. I have never served in a house, monsieur, she said quickly. I was not in Paris before. Ah, he said softly. Not in Paris? That explains it. Perhaps I mistake you. He didn't sound convinced. Behind her, floorboards creaked. Louis had stepped into the corridor. He took in the scene at a glance. Elise standing rigid, Durand close, the half-open door of the office behind them. Baron, Louis said lightly, have you lost your way? The exit is in the other direction. Durand turned toward him, polite smile already in place. I returned for a glove, he said. In doing so, I discovered something more intriguing. Your waitress has curious talents, Beaumont. Louis's gaze flicked to Elise, then back. So I have learned. Durand's smile thinned. You must be careful. Talented people without positions can become restless. I will keep that in mind, Louis replied, voice still pleasant. If you have everything you need, I will not delay mademoiselle from her work any longer. Durand offered a small bow, first to Louis, then to Elise. Of course, he said. Good night, Mademoiselle Moreau. I am certain this is not the last time we cross paths. She forced a polite murmur of farewell. He walked away, the echo of his footsteps fading toward the front of the restaurant. The doorbells chimed one last time. Silence dropped over the corridor. Louis looked at her closely. What did he want? She struggled to control her voice. He said he thought he recognized me, monsieur, from somewhere else. I told him he was mistaken. And? Louis asked. Did he insist? No, she lied. He let it go. Louis's eyes searched her face. He clearly did not believe it entirely, but he also did not press. Durand enjoys unnerving people, he said. Do not let him succeed. He has less power than he thinks, despite all his bluster. Elise swallowed. That is easy for you to say, monsieur. He cannot ruin you with a few careless words. He held her gaze. You may be surprised. But for tonight, you have done enough. Go home. Rest. Pretend this evening never happened, if you can. And the matter you spoke of? She asked quietly. Your request. The offer stands, he said. Think about it before Thursday. If you decide against it, I will understand. She gave a faint nod. He stepped aside to let her pass. As she walked toward the kitchen, she felt his eyes on her back once more. That night, in the small room she rented under the eaves of an old building, Elise sat at a rickety table with a stub of candle burning low. The city outside muttered and sighed, but up here the sounds were distant. Her landlady, Madame Besson, had already gone to bed. The house creaked as it settled into the night. On the table before her lay a scrap of paper and a blunt pencil. "You look like you are about to fight a duel with that paper," Madame Besson had joked earlier before leaving her alone. Elise had only smiled weakly. She stared at the page. "If you agree, send a note." She heard Durand's voice in her memory. "I could swear I have seen you before, a girl in a doorway." He could not know. Too many years had passed. The house was gone. The town had changed. Surely he could not connect that frightened girl with the waitress in Paris. But what if he did? She thought of her father's face on the last day before everything collapsed. The hollow eyes, the shame, the silence. She thought of Louis in the office, the tired honesty in his voice, the way he had said "we," as if they shared something besides a chance conversation. She picked up the pencil. Her hand trembled only once before she wrote, "Monsieur le Comte, if your offer is still sincere, I will help you as you asked. I ask again that my name never be mentioned. You may send word through the maitre d'. He knows where I live. Respectfully, Elise Moreau." She read the lines twice. They were simple, plain. There was no way to smooth the risk out of them. She folded the paper carefully and sealed it with a bit of wax from the candle. Tomorrow she would slip it to the maitre d' when no one watched. She extinguished the flame and lay down on the narrow bed. Sleep came in broken pieces. Each time she drifted off, she saw Durand's eyes in the corridor, searching her face. 3 days later, Paris flickered with gaslight and gossip. At the Beaumont residence on the boulevard, lamps shone from the tall windows. Carriages rolled up one after another, wheels rattling on the stones. Footmen opened doors. Well-dressed men and women stepped down, smoothing gloves, adjusting hats, arranging smiles. Inside, the air hummed with music and conversation. Louis stood near the entrance, greeting his guests. He wore a dark coat and a white waistcoat, his cravat flawless. His expression was calm, his compliments smooth, yet his mind was elsewhere. "Count Beaumont," a stout gentleman said, "you are in good spirits tonight. One would think business has been kind to you." "One must be in good spirits before one tempts fortune," Louis replied lightly. "Otherwise, she offends easily." The gentleman laughed and moved on. Durand arrived, of course. He bowed, his eyes already scanning the room as if counting coins. "Beaumont," he said, "you have assembled quite the audience. I trust you will not disappoint." "I do my best to avoid disappointment," Louis said, "though it has a way of arriving uninvited." They exchanged the kind of smiles that concealed more than they showed. "Where is Delacroix?" Durand asked. "Already in the salon," Louis said. "Frowning at the paintings, no doubt. Go, join him. I will follow shortly." Durand moved on, leaving a faint trail of unease behind him. Louis waited until there was a break in the stream of arrivals. Then he glanced toward a side door, almost hidden behind a tall potted plant. A maid slipped through it carrying a tray of glasses. As the door swung, a slender figure could be seen briefly in the small room beyond. He excused himself from the hallway and crossed the polished floor quickly, entering the side room and closing the door behind him. It was a modest sitting room with only a small table, 2 chairs and a narrow window overlooking the courtyard. On the edge of the table sat Elise, dressed not in her restaurant uniform, but in a simple dark dress and a plain shawl. Her hair was coiled neatly at the nape of her neck. She stood at once when he entered. "You should sit," he said. "If someone glimpses you, it is better they think you are here on household business, not waiting to be summoned like a conspirator." "I do not feel like sitting," she replied quietly. "There are too many people out there." "You have been here long?" he asked. "Since before the first guests," she said. "Your steward told me where to wait." "Did anyone question your presence?" he asked. "A kitchen maid asked if I was a cousin of one of the footmen," she said. "I said I was helping with the linens." He smiled briefly. A sensible answer. She twisted the edge of her shawl between her fingers. "I should not be here," she murmured. "I'm not made for rooms like this." "Neither am I on most days," he said lightly. "Yet here we are." He moved to the table and set down a bundle of folded papers. "These are the summaries we prepared," he said, Contracts, obligations, approximate figures, nothing that reveals names as promised, but enough for you to see where we are exposed. She stepped closer, focusing on the documents with visible relief. Numbers were safer than people. He unfolded the pages, explaining briefly. We have 3 main suppliers in the provinces, he said. 2 are tied to us by family and long habit. The 3rd is newer, more flexible, but impatient. The creditors in the city are similar. Some fear losing influence, others simply want their interest. She nodded, following his finger as it moved over the page. If you press too hard on the old suppliers, she said, they will feel betrayed. They may not have many alternatives, but they will look for them. The newer one will respond faster. Start there. I had thought the same, he said. And the creditors? She frowned slightly, thinking, those who fear losing influence are the most dangerous. They will act quickly to keep it. So you must make them believe that acting too quickly will cost them. And the others? He asked. The ones who only care about interest will follow, she said. They watch the strongest. Hurt one and the rest will quiet. He watched her as she spoke, admiring the way her mind moved, the ease with which she sorted what frightened him. She caught his gaze and looked away, flustered. I am sorry, she said. I speak too much. On the contrary, he said. If anything, you speak too little. He flipped to another page. I have prepared a draft of the letter we will release to the newspapers, he said, announcing our commitment to the provinces. I would like you to read it. He handed her a single sheet. She held it carefully, eyes moving quickly over the lines. The tone is good, she said after a moment. Firm, confident. You must mention the workers directly. The workers? He repeated. Yes, she said. Not only the factory. People worry less for buildings than for livelihoods. Promise stability. Promise that you will not abandon them. Even if you cannot guarantee it completely, the pledge will matter. He considered this, then nodded. I will add it. She hesitated a second, then ventured. You must also speak of the future as if you intend to live in it yourself. He frowned faintly. What do you mean? You cannot sound as if you are tidying your affairs before departure, she said. You must sound as if you are building something you intend to see with your own eyes. People trust men who plan to stay. He smiled slowly. And you say you have no experience in this world. I have experience in watching men, she said. That is all. He folded the letter and set it aside. Thank you, he said. I will revise it before tomorrow morning. A faint murmur of music drifted through the walls from the main salon. Laughter rose and fell. Will they accept your plan? She asked. They will question it, he said. Durand will needle, Fournier will scowl, Delacroix will measure every word. But I think they will have to accept. I offer them a way forward. The alternative is to admit they have no idea what to do. She nodded, then glanced toward the door. And if they guess you did not build it alone, she asked. If Durand suspects? Durand suspects everything, he said. It is his favorite pastime. Let him. He has less proof than he pretends. He recognized me at the restaurant, she reminded him. Or thought he did. He thought he did, Louis said. You told him he was mistaken. Let him doubt himself for once. She did not answer. Her fingers tightened around the shawl again. A soft knock sounded. They both turned. A footman's voice came through the door. Monsieur le Comte, your guests have gathered in the small salon, as requested. Monsieur Delacroix asked if you will begin soon. Thank you, Louis called. Tell them I will join them in a moment. The footsteps retreated. He turned back to Elise. This is it, he said quietly. If this goes badly, I will be out of resources and friends by midnight. Do not joke about that, she said, then caught herself. Forgive me. No, he said. I appreciate the honesty. The men out there will tell me everything is fine while they look for the nearest exit. He took a breath, straightening his shoulders. You cannot stay in this room the whole evening, he added. Someone may notice. There is a small corridor behind the library. You can move there if needed. If anyone asks, you are assisting the housekeeper. I will stay out of sight, she said. He hesitated. If you hear raised voices, he said, it will likely be Fournier. Do not be alarmed. He likes to shout before he agrees. Despite her anxiety, she smiled faintly. I will remember. He reached for the door, then paused. Elise, he said softly. She looked up at the sound of her name without title. He seemed to realize it at the same moment but did not correct himself. "Whatever happens out there," he said, "know that I am grateful. I would not have had the courage to face them like this without your help." Her throat tightened unexpectedly. "I am only rearranging numbers, monsieur," she said. "You are the one facing the men who hold them." "Even so," he said. "Wish me luck." She met his eyes. "I wish you more than luck," she said. "I wish you clarity and patience." He gave a short nod, almost like a bow, then left the room, closing the door gently behind him. The music swelled slightly as the door opened and closed. Then it was muffled again. Elise waited a few moments, listening to her own heartbeat. Then she moved to the narrow window and looked out at the courtyard, where the dark shapes of carriages stood like patient animals. Time passed slowly. She could not hear the precise words from the small salon, only the hum of voices rising and falling. Once a louder tone cut through, Fournier no doubt, but it subsided quickly. At last curiosity overcame caution. She opened the door a fraction and slipped into the corridor, keeping close to the wall. At the end of the passage, a half-open door looked into the small salon. She stopped just short of it, where she could hear more clearly but remain unseen. "Cannot pretend this will be painless," Louis was saying. "There will be adjustments. Some profits will be delayed. But we will not be throwing away assets that still have value. We will be protecting them. And in the meantime, creditors circle," Durand's voice cut in. "They do not enjoy being kept waiting." "They will not be kept waiting," Louis replied. "They will simply understand that trying to devour everything at once may leave them choking." Murmurs, a short laugh. "Delacroix, perhaps. And this story of yours," Fournier said, "that the line to the coast is a shield, not a gamble. Will anyone believe it?" "They will," Louis said calmly, "because it is true. The factory and the line are one project, not two. I have allowed others to think otherwise. That was my error. I am correcting it." Elise heard papers rustle. "These are the proposed adjustments," Louis said. "Reduced dividends in the first year of modification, but increased long-term stability. If any of you prefer to withdraw now, you may. I will find other partners." Silence. Then Delacroix again, cautious. "You speak with more conviction than the last time we met, Beaumont. What has changed?" Louis answered without hesitation. "I have simply decided that I will no longer let fear choose for me," he said. "If we fail after acting with a clear plan, so be it. But I will not oversee a slow, timid collapse." There was another pause. Someone cleared his throat. "Your measures are bold," Delacroix said at last, "but not reckless. I am cautiously in favor, on the condition that we review the situation in 6 months." "Agreed," Louis said. "Fournier?" Delacroix asked. Fournier grumbled. "I do not like it, but I like doing nothing even less. I will support it." "And you, Baron?" Delacroix asked. Durand was silent for a moment. "At first glance," he said slowly, "the plan seems coherent. I am curious, however, how you arrived at it so suddenly. This is not the way you have spoken in past meetings, Beaumont." "I took time to think," Louis replied, "and I listened more carefully than before. Perhaps that is all." "Perhaps," Durand said. "In any case, I will not oppose you, for now. But I reserve the right to revisit certain clauses in the near future." "Of course," Louis said. Elise let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. They had accepted, or at least they had not refused. She stepped back from the doorway, preparing to retreat to the small room. She had taken only 2 steps when a voice spoke quietly behind her. "Eavesdropping, mademoiselle." She froze. Baron Durand stood at the far end of the corridor, half in shadow. He must have left the salon by another door and come around. "I was only passing, monsieur," she said, turning slowly. "I did not wish to interrupt." He walked toward her, unhurried. "You have a talent for being near important conversations," he said. "First at the restaurant, now in the house of the man whose fortunes you have so nobly taken to heart." "I am here by his request," she said, "to assist with the household. Nothing more." "Nothing more," he repeated softly. "And yet I see paper and ink in that little room where you waited. Summaries, letters. Did you rearrange his linen as well as his thoughts?" Her mouth went dry. "I do not know what you mean," she said. His pleasant mask slipped a little. "Do not insult me, girl. I have played this game far longer than you have been alive. You fed him those phrases. A shield, not a gamble. Protecting assets. Those are not his words. They are yours. She took a step back. I am only a servant here, monsieur. Ah, he said softly. But you were not always. He moved closer. His voice dropped to a murmur that barely reached her ears. I knew I had seen you before, he said. It has tormented me for nights. Then, as I watched you just now, it struck me. You are older, thinner. But the eyes have not changed. You are the daughter of Henri Duret. The name hit her like a blow. Her hand went to the wall to steady herself. My name is Moreau, she said weakly. Now, yes, Durand said. Then, you were Elise Duret. Your father hosted many discussions in his comfortable house. I recall a little girl at the doorway, always listening. He used to laugh and say he was raising his best critic. Her throat closed. You are mistaken. No, he said quietly. I am not. Duret took the blame for certain losses that did not belong solely to him. He fell, and others stepped aside just in time. Fortunate timing, some might say. You disappeared. I assumed your family had gone abroad. He smiled slightly without warmth. And here you are in Paris, whispering advice into the ear of a count. Life has a sense of irony. Fear flared into anger. You speak as if you were only an observer, she said. You were one of his clients. You knew the scheme was faulty. You left him to carry the ruin alone. He shrugged, untroubled. He was careless, I was prudent. The world rewards prudence. It rewards ruthlessness, she snapped. He tilted his head, regarding her with new interest. There it is, he said. The spine beneath the apron. He stepped even closer. She could smell the faint cologne on his coat. Listen to me carefully, Mademoiselle Duret or Moreau, he said. You are in a very delicate position. If it became known that the daughter of a disgraced advisor is secretly guiding Beaumont's decisions, what do you think the papers would say? She swallowed hard. The image sprang up unbidden. Headlines, whispers, accusations. Her father's name dragged out again, this time linked to hers. They would say he was a fool, Durand answered his own question. They would say you manipulated him, that you sought revenge, that you used your position to harm his investors. I would never, she began. He raised a hand. I know you would not, he said. You are too naive for that. But truth matters little when men smell scandal. He let the words sink in, then continued pleasantly. Now, I am a generous man. I have no wish to destroy you. It would be untidy. But you have put yourself in the center of a board where men like me play harshly. You need someone who understands the rules. And that someone is you, she asked, bitterness creeping into her voice. Why not, he said. We have a shared history. Your father's downfall taught me much. Perhaps now you can profit from that education. She stared at him, disbelief and dread mixing. What do you want? She asked. Very little, he said. Only that you remember who holds your future in his hand. You will continue to advise Beaumont as you have begun. You will make his plan work up to a point, but you will also ensure that certain decisions favor my interests. How? She demanded. You are clever, he said. You will think of ways. Encourage him to consolidate debts with my firm. Persuade him that my terms are reasonable when he hesitates. Guide him away from concessions that might weaken my position. In return, I will keep your true name out of conversation. I will even, if necessary, remind others that the Duret scandal was not quite what it seemed. And if I refuse? She asked softly. He smiled. Then I will express my concern to the other investors, he said. Quietly, of course. I will suggest that your sudden presence in Beaumont's affairs is suspicious. I will say that you approached him, using your knowledge to regain influence. His reputation will suffer, yours will shatter, and your father's grave will not be allowed to rest. Her fingers dug into the fabric of her shawl. You would not dare, she whispered. Do not mistake my patience for softness, he said. Consider my offer. I do not require an answer tonight, but I will expect a sign soon, a suggestion in Beaumont's next proposal, a small push in my direction. Footsteps sounded faintly at the end of the corridor. Voices approached. Durand stepped back, his face smoothing into pleasant lines again. Think carefully, mademoiselle, he murmured. You have a gift. Do not throw it away by choosing the noble, useless path. He inclined his head slightly, then turned and walked away, disappearing around the corner just as Louis entered the corridor from the opposite side. Louis saw her at once. "Elise," he said, striding toward her. "There you are. I looked for you. I wanted you to hear it from me before you heard it as gossip." They accepted. Delacroix, Fournier, even Durand. "We have 6 months to prove ourselves." He stopped in front of her. His smile faded as he took in her pale face. "What is it?" he asked. "You look as if you have seen a ghost." She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. "Did someone speak to you?" he pressed. "Did Durand say something?" She glanced down the corridor where the Baron had vanished. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Louis's hand tightened at his side. "Elise," he said quietly, "tell me what happened." She looked up at him, torn between confession and fear, between exposing Durand's threat and protecting her father's memory. As music swelled in the next room, Elise realized that whatever she chose to say, or not to say, would decide not only Louis's future but her own. For a few seconds she only stared at him. His face was close, concerned, the lamplight catching the faint line between his brows. One lie, she thought, and everything might stay as it is. One truth, and everything might break. Her father's name seemed to echo in the narrow corridor. "Elise," Louis said again more gently, "did Durand threaten you?" Her lips parted. No sound came. He waited, not moving, as if afraid a single impatient gesture would send her fleeing. Finally, the words scraped out. "Yes." His jaw tightened. "What did he say?" She looked past him, toward the end of the hallway where the music floated from the salon. Behind that music, she heard Durand's voice, cool and amused. "He recognized me," she said. "Not as a waitress, as someone else." Louis's eyes sharpened. "As who?" She swallowed. "As the daughter of Henri Duret." The name hung in the air between them like a bell that had just been struck. Louis frowned. "Duret," he repeated slowly. "The advisor who... There was a scandal some years ago. Provincial investments, a collapse." "Yes," she whispered. "He took the blame. Others did not." "And Durand was one of those others," Louis said quietly. She nodded once. "And you," he said, voice softer, "are that man's daughter?" "Yes," she said again. "My name was Elise Duret. We changed it after we lost everything." He exhaled through his nose, not in disgust, but in something like understanding. "That explains much," he murmured. "Your knowledge, your caution. Why you speak of fear as if you have known it a long time." "It explains why I do not belong here," she said, "and why Durand believes he can do what he wishes with me." His gaze sharpened. "What exactly did he threaten?" She hesitated, then forced herself to repeat the Baron's words as faithfully as she could. Durand's low voice in the corridor, the identification, the casual mention of her father's fall, the offer to protect her if she guided Beaumont's decisions in his favor, the promise to smear her and Louis alike if she refused. As she spoke, Louis's face changed. First surprise, then disbelief, then a controlled growing anger that made his eyes darken. "That vulture," he said quietly when she finished. "That sanctimonious vulture." "Please," she said quickly, "do not confront him in anger. He has power, influence. If he speaks against me, he will speak against you whether I confront him or not," Louis cut in. "Men like Durand do not leave weapons lying unused. The only question is when he chooses to wield them." "Temes," she wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. "I should have refused your offer," she whispered. "If I had stayed in the restaurant, none of this—" "Do not say that," he interrupted. "The fault is not yours. It is mine for dragging you into the light without asking who might be waiting in the shadows." He ran a hand through his hair, a sign of genuine agitation. "I should have known," he muttered. "I have seen enough of Durand's methods to recognize them. He was involved in Duret's affair more deeply than he ever admitted. I remember whispers even then." "You do?" she asked faintly. He nodded, eyes distant for a moment. "I was younger," he said. "Less involved. I paid less attention than I should have. All I knew was that a man named Duret fell and several others miraculously avoided ruin. My steward told me later that the mathematics of it did not add up. But by then, the matter was buried." He refocused on her. "You should have told me who you were," he said, but there was no reproach in his voice, only regret. "I was ashamed," she said. I still am. To carry a name people spit when they speak of failures. It is not something one offers freely. You have nothing to be ashamed of, he said firmly. Your father may have erred, but from what you describe, he was also used. That is not a crime. That is a tragedy. Tragedies do not sell newspapers, she said. Scandals do. And if this scandal is revived with my name attached to it, your plan, your company, your reputation— Stop, he said. She fell silent. He looked at her, and for a moment she saw not the Count who spoke easily in salons, but the man who had put his pride aside in the office at the restaurant. We will not hide, he said quietly. Not you, not this. That is how men like Durand win. They count on others' shame. I will not play by his rules. You cannot fight all of them, she said. They have money, papers, lawyers. So do I, he answered. More importantly, I have something he does not. A very stubborn sense of when I have been a fool. I was blind before. I will not be again. He took a breath, forcing calm. Listen to me, he said. Tonight you say nothing to anyone else. If Durand approaches you again, you are polite and vague. You do not agree to anything. Do you understand? Yes, she said. Tomorrow, he went on, I will speak with my legal advisor and my steward. Quietly. I want every document we can find related to your father's affair. Every contract, every letter, every mention of Durand's involvement. If there is a way to show that he profited from that collapse, we will find it. Fear flared again. And if you do not, she asked, if the papers prove nothing, if all you do is stir the ashes, then at least I will know what field I am fighting on, he said. I am not promising a triumphant victory. I am promising not to let this man decide your fate in silence. She looked at him, taking in the set of his jaw, the steady resolve. You are risking much for someone you barely know, she said. He met her eyes. I know enough, he said. I know that you could have accepted Durand's offer. It would have been easier. You could have guided me into his net and saved yourself. You did not. You came to me instead. She opened her mouth to protest that she had hesitated, that the decision had not been as pure as he imagined, but his gaze held her. That alone, he said quietly, is worth risking more than a business arrangement. The music from the salon drifted around them, a waltz bright and oblivious. He straightened slightly. I must return to my guests, he said. If I stay away much longer, they will assume I am plotting to run off with their fortunes. He hesitated. Will you remain here, he asked, or would you prefer to leave? I should leave, she said. If anyone sees me, they will ask questions. There is a side staircase, he said. My steward will show you. You can slip out without passing through the main hall. She nodded. He took a step back, then stopped again, something unfinished in his eyes. Elise, he said quietly, whatever happens next, I want you to remember this. You are not alone. Not anymore. The words landed softly, but firmly. They seemed to settle in the empty spaces inside her. For now, he added, let us both play our parts as if the world were simple. I will smile at men I do not trust. You will vanish into the night. Tomorrow, we begin to untangle this properly. She watched him walk away, back toward the glittering rooms. The next morning dawned grey over Paris. In a modest office on a quieter street, an old solicitor with ink-stained fingers listened as Count Beaumont spoke faster than usual. I want records from 13 years ago, the man said, adjusting his spectacles. Provincial contracts, private agreements, newspaper clippings. This will not be simple. I am not asking for simple, Louis replied. I am asking for thorough. You handled some of my grandfather's affairs at the time. You must have copies, or at least know where to look. The solicitor pursed his lips. I recall the Duret matter, he said slowly. It was ugly. People were eager to forget it once the dust settled. Some of us do not have that luxury, Louis said, especially when the dust was swept under someone else's rug. The older man studied him. This is not mere curiosity, is it? No, Louis said. It concerns someone under my protection now. Under your protection, the solicitor repeated. Strong words. I am learning to use them, Louis said dryly. Will you help me? The solicitor sighed. I will send a clerk to the archives, he said. We will see what can be recovered. But, Count, may I offer unsolicited advice? You will whether I permit it or not, Louis said. Please, even if we find proof that certain men profited from Duret's ruin, the solicitor said. "They will not go quietly if confronted. You must decide whether exposing old sins is worth the enemies you will make." Louis thought of Elise, her shoulders drawn tight as she spoke Durand's name. "It is not only about old sins," he said. "It is about now. If I let this stand, I will be complicit in a second injustice." The solicitor nodded slowly. "Very well. We will proceed." Days blurred into a pattern of quiet movement. Louis spent his mornings at the factory offices, his afternoons in meetings, his evenings at his desk, reading and rereading the newly structured contracts. At odd hours, sealed envelopes arrived from the solicitor, copies of letters, clippings from provincial newspapers, notes summarizing old testimonies. He learned more about Henri Duret in a week than he had known in 13 years. He saw a man who had indeed misjudged a venture, but who had also signed agreements that shifted risk unfairly onto his shoulders. He saw Durand's name in the margins more than once, attached to clauses that allowed him to withdraw his capital at key moments without penalty, while others remained trapped. It was not a crime in the eyes of the law. It was, however, a clear pattern. One evening in the small library of his house, Louis spread the papers on a low table. When the door opened softly, he did not need to look up to know who it was. "You sent for me," Elise said, stepping inside. "Yes," he said. "Come." She approached, eyes falling on the scattered documents. Her hand hovered over one clipping, then withdrew, almost afraid to touch it. "What is this?" she asked. "The bones of your past," he said. "Stripped of rumor. Only paper and ink." He gestured to a chair. She sat, moving carefully, as if the room might betray her. "There were letters," he said, "from your father to several investors, warnings, requests to slow the pace, to reconsider. They were ignored, or answered with polite phrases that meant nothing." He tapped a folded page. "This one," he said, "is from Durand. He praises your father's insight, then adds a private clause withdrawing part of his own capital while urging others to increase theirs. The timing is revealing." She swallowed. He knew the scheme would fail. He suspected strongly enough to save himself, Louis said, and to leave your father exposed. Her fingers curled around the edge of her skirt. "Can you use this?" she asked. "Does it matter now?" "It matters to the truth," he said. "Publicly it is more delicate. The contracts were legal. Shrewd, but legal. Accusing him of manipulation would lead to drawn-out arguments. He would have time to twist the narrative." "Then what is the point?" she asked, despair edging her voice. "The point," he said steadily, "is that he no longer holds the only story. You feared that if your name were known, people would say your father was solely at fault. We can now show that is not the whole picture. We can show a pattern of advantage taken, not simply a foolish advisor." "And Durand?" she asked. "Durand will know that I know," Louis said. "That will change how he plays." She sat back, letting out a slow breath. "You intend to tell them," she said. "Your investors, about me, about my father." "Yes," he said. Fear flickered across her face. "Louis," she began, then stopped, startled at herself. He did not seem to notice the absent title. She tried again. "Monsieur le Comte, if you do this, they will judge you. They will say you trusted a disgraced man's daughter over experienced advisors. They will question your judgment. They may withdraw their support." "They might have done that anyway," he said. "At least this way I choose the terms of the conversation." "And what of me?" she asked. "If they see me as a scandal, as a reminder of a failure, they will not respect my counsel. They will resent me." "Some may," he admitted. "Others may surprise you. And even if none of them respect your counsel, I do. That does not change." She looked down at the papers again, then back at him. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly. "Truly, beyond justice, beyond pride. Why risk so much for me?" He drew a breath slower this time. "Because," he said, "I cannot ask you to hide who you are and yet expect you to help me see clearly. It would be an offense to what I have come to admire most about you." She blinked, caught off guard. "Admire?" she repeated, the word foreign. "Yes," he said simply. "Admire. Your mind, your honesty, the way you refuse to let my foolish jest silence you, the way you came to me with the truth about Durand, even though it might have been easier not to." Her cheeks warmed. "Do not make me into something noble," she said. I hesitated. I thought of saving myself first. I thought of keeping quiet. You did not keep quiet, he said. That is what matters. Silence fell. Only the faint ticking of a clock filled the space between them. He moved around the table and took the chair opposite her. I must tell you something else, he said. It concerns more than business. She looked at him, apprehensive. In the weeks since that first night, he said quietly, I have found myself thinking of you at the strangest times, when I read a report and wonder what you would say, when I pass a coffee house and imagine you listening at a nearby table, when I am about to make a hasty decision and hear your voice in my head, asking whether I am acting from fear or from clarity. Her heart beat faster. This is very unwise, she murmured. Extremely, he agreed. For both of us. He held her gaze. Nevertheless, he said, it is true. Somewhere between my arrogance at that table and our conversations in these quiet rooms, my regard for you changed. I can respect your mind and still admit that I am deeply attached to the person it belongs to. Her fingers closed around the edge of the table. Do not say these things, she whispered. You are a count. I serve plates. Whatever I know, whatever I can calculate, it does not erase the distance between our worlds. Those worlds were drawn by men like Durand, he said. I find myself less eager to honor their borders. You may ignore them, she said. The world will not. If you tie your name to mine, you will give your enemies a blade with which to cut you. They will say you are reckless, that you have lost your sense. Perhaps I have, he said, but I would prefer that to losing my conscience. He leaned forward, his voice low. I do not know yet what form the future will take, he said. You are right, there will be whispers, but I know this. I do not want a future in which you are reduced to an invisible hand in the shadows, while I accept praise for work that is not solely mine. Nor do I want a future in which you vanish back into the crowd, and I spend the rest of my life wondering what might have been if I had dared a little more. She drew in a shaky breath. You speak as if feelings could change society, she said. No, he replied, but they can change decisions, and decisions over time shape society more than we think. He reached across the table, then stopped, leaving his hand resting open between them, palm up, not touching. I cannot offer you a fairy tale, he said. I cannot promise that everyone will suddenly applaud if I raise your position, but I can offer you this. My name openly beside yours, my protection when tongues wag, my ear always, my partnership in every risk we take. Her eyes stung. You speak of partnership, she said. But what exactly are you asking? He held her gaze steadily. I am asking, he said, if you would consider binding your life to mine. Not today, not tomorrow, but when the dust of this business settles. I am asking if you would consider becoming more than my hidden advisor. If you would one day allow me to call you my wife. The word seemed to echo in the small library. She stared at him, as if trying to decide whether she had heard correctly. You are serious, she whispered. Entirely, he said. I am foolish in many ways, but not in this. She shook her head, struggling to find air. I have no dowry, she said. No name that opens doors, only a ruined one that closes them. Then we will open new ones ourselves, he said. I have a title and some money, yes, but those alone will not keep me warm in old age, nor prevent me from making poor choices. You have what I lack: perspective, courage, a relentless memory of what happens when men like me forget the cost of our decisions to those beneath us. You imagine me better than I am, she said. I see you as you are, he replied, flawed, stubborn, occasionally sharp-tongued, often afraid and yet moving forward anyway. That is precisely why I... He hesitated, then finished quietly. That is why I care for you, Elise. The way he said her name this time left no doubt of his meaning. Tears pricked at her eyes. She blinked them back fiercely. If I accept, she said, voice barely above a whisper, what would become of me if your plan fails? If your investors abandon you, if we both fall, I would drag you down. You would stand beside me, he said. That is all. Failure shared is less bitter than success borne alone. And if your family objects, she pressed, if they refuse to receive me, then they will adjust or live with their displeasure, he said. I am not a boy to be guided anymore. My grandfather is gone. My remaining relatives enjoy my hospitality but do not pay my bills. They will shout, then adapt, as people do when they realize the world will not rearrange itself to suit their prejudices. She gave a shaky laugh at that, the first hint of humor breaking through the tension. "You speak with great confidence for a man about to scandalize half his acquaintances," she said. "I am learning from you," he answered. "You taught me that sometimes a bold move is less dangerous than a timid half-measure." He still had not closed the distance between his hand and hers. "I am not asking for an answer tonight," he said. "You have already had too many shocks. We must first deal with Durand properly, and with the announcement of your role." "The announcement?" she repeated. "Yes," he said. "I intend to tell my investors that I have engaged an independent consultant, someone with personal experience of financial loss and a sharp eye for risk. I will not begin by naming you or your father. I will simply establish that I do not stand alone in my decisions." "And when they ask for a name?" she asked. "I will give it," he said. "But I will do so in a room where I am prepared, with documents in hand that make clear your father's story is not the easy scandal they remember. I will not let Durand be the one to reveal it first, dripping poison into every ear." Fear still shadowed her features, but there was a spark now too, something like fragile hope. "And if, after all that, I say no?" she asked quietly. "If I cannot bear the weight of your offer, what then?" "Then," he said, "you will still have your position as my consultant for as long as you wish it. I will not withdraw my respect, because you do not return my feelings as I might hope. It would sadden me. It would not make your value less." She studied him, searching for any sign of insincerity. She found only a tired, earnest man who had made mistakes and was trying awkwardly to correct them. Slowly, very slowly, she lifted her hand. She laid it lightly in his open palm, a brief, trembling touch. "I cannot promise you an answer yet," she said. "My heart is not accustomed to being consulted. It will need time to catch up with all this." He smiled, something warm and unguarded flickering through his eyes. "Then let it take time," he said. "We are already altering the course of my company. We can afford to move carefully with our lives." She withdrew her hand, the warmth of his skin lingering on her fingertips. "What will you do about Durand?" she asked. "I will invite him, Delacroix, and Fournier to a private meeting," he said. "Soon, I will lay out the final structure of our agreements. I will also inform them that I have retained your counsel and why. When Durand attempts to object, as he surely will, I will present these papers." He gestured to the documents on the table. "I will not accuse him of crimes," he said. "I will simply make it clear that I know the full history, and that any attempt to smear you will invite closer examination of his own record." "You are playing a dangerous game," she said softly. "So is he," Louis replied. "The difference is that I am prepared to lose money. He is not prepared to lose face." She nodded slowly. "When that meeting happens," she said, "I would like to be present. Not in the room, perhaps, but nearby. I have hidden from the consequences of my name long enough. I would like to hear, even from the shadows, the sound of it being spoken without derision." He regarded her with something like admiration. "As you wish," he said. "You have earned that right." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "Then we have much to do," she said. "Contracts to refine, arguments to anticipate, old ghosts to face." He rose as well. "We do," he said. "But for the first time in many months, I feel that the path ahead is not only a series of traps. There is also a possibility of light." She glanced toward the window, where the late afternoon sky was beginning to pale. "I should return to my rooms," she said. "Madame Besson becomes anxious if I am late. She imagines all manner of catastrophes." "Then we must reassure her by sending you home with more ordinary worries than blackmail and scandal," he said. He walked her to the library door. As she opened it, he spoke once more. "Elise." She turned. "Whatever happens in that meeting with my investors," he said quietly, "whatever they say, whatever faces they make, remember this. I have already chosen to trust you. The rest is noise." Her throat tightened again. She managed a small, steady nod. "Very well," she said. "I will try." She stepped out into the corridor, the echo of his words following her, carrying her down the staircase and out into the cool air of the street, where carriages rattled past and Paris hurried by, unaware that in a quiet house 2 lives had just been bound together by more than numbers. The morning of the meeting broke clear and cold. Elise stood in the same small sitting room at the Beaumont house where she had waited before, hands clasped before her to keep them from trembling. On the table lay a glass of water no one had touched. On the chair sat her shawl. She could not sit. From the room beyond the door came muffled sounds, footsteps, the rustle of coats, low greetings, Delacroix's measured tone, Fournier's gruff reply, Durand's smooth voice, unmistakable even through walls. The latch turned softly. Louis slipped into the room, closing the door behind him. He wore his usual dark coat, but something in his posture was different, more grounded, as if he had anchored himself to some invisible point. "They are all here," he said. Durand arrived early. "Of course." She tried to smile. "Vultures circle before they know if there is a feast." "Let us hope they leave hungry," he answered. He looked at her more closely. "Are you ready?" he asked. "No," she admitted, "but I am here." He gave a small nod, as if that answer satisfied him more than bravado would have. "You will stay in the library at first," he said. "The door between the rooms will be ajar. You will hear everything. If I call you in, it will be because the moment is right, not because I wish to expose you." "You are certain you must tell them?" she asked quietly. "We could continue as we are. You could pretend—" "I have pretended enough," he said. "Tonight I will not." She drew a breath. "Then I trust you." His expression softened at that. "I will not take long with preliminaries," he said. "They are eager to hear numbers. I am eager to reach the part that matters." He moved toward the door, then paused and turned back. "Whatever you hear out there," he said, "do not doubt me. Not even if they shout, not even if Durand plays the wounded innocent. I know what I am doing." "You sound very sure," she said. "I am terrified," he answered, "but I am sure." A small, involuntary laugh escaped her. It loosened something in her chest. He watched her for a heartbeat longer. "I will call when it is time," he said. He left and closed the door gently. She crossed into the library as they had arranged and took a place near the connecting door, where the crack between the panels offered sound without sight. She could see only a narrow slice of the other room, the edge of a carpet, the corner of a chair leg. Voices drifted through. "3/4 of the year completed," Delacroix was saying. "We should begin with results, Beaumont. Promises do not pay dividends." "Agreed," Louis replied. "Then let us speak of results." Paper rustled. Chairs creaked as men shifted. "As you know," Louis went on, "we implemented the consolidation plan 6 months ago. We renegotiated provincial contracts, adjusted interest structures, and restructured the railway timeline. The initial pain was not insignificant. However, the numbers for the last 2 quarters speak clearly." He began reading figures, calm and precise: increased stability, reduced losses, small but steady profit. Delacroix hummed approval. "Better than I expected," he said. Fournier grunted. "We are not rich yet, but at least we are not bleeding." Durand's silence hung for a moment before he spoke. "Stability is welcome," he said, "but it is not everything. I am curious, Beaumont. Your manner has changed as much as your strategy. You speak now with a certainty that does not quite match the man we saw almost sell his factory in a panic." "You noticed," Louis said. She could hear the smile in his voice, but it was a steady smile, not a flippant one. "It would be difficult not to," Durand replied. "One wonders where this new clarity came from." "We will come to that," Louis said. "First, I want it on record. Do any of you oppose continuing on our current course for the next year, with the adjustments I have outlined?" Delacroix spoke first. "I do not oppose. I support it, on the condition that we review again in 6 months." "Agreed," Louis said. Fournier sighed. "If I say no, I will be the only one at the door while the rest of you remain at the table. I will not make a fool of myself." "I agree." Silence. Then Durand. "I find myself in the unusual position," he said slowly, "of being unable to raise a substantial objection. The plan works. I profit. For now, that is enough." "Good," Louis said. "Then we can move to the next matter, the more personal one." Chairs shifted. Someone cleared his throat. "This should be interesting," Durand murmured. Louis did not take the bait. "I told you," he said, "when we began these changes, that I had listened more carefully than before." That was true. What I did not say at the time was whom I had listened to. A short pause. "I have engaged the counsel of an advisor," he continued. "Someone with a sharp grasp of risk and an intimate understanding of what happens when bad decisions fall on those least able to bear them. Name? Fournier asked brusquely. I will give it, Louis said. But first, I want to make one thing clear. The improvements you see in these numbers are not solely the result of my brilliance. They are the result of a collaboration. I will not accept praise that is not entirely mine, while allowing another to carry the blame if anything goes wrong. Very noble, Durand said lightly, but unnecessary. We hired you, not a phantom. You hired results, Louis replied. You now have them. You also deserve to know who helped shape them. Though whether you deserve the privilege is another question. Enough, Delacroix said calmly. Who is this advisor, Beaumont? Louis drew a breath. Her name, he said, is Elise Moreau. Some of you have already met her, though you did not realize the full extent of her mind. She served us wine at Le Cygne d'Or the night we first discussed selling the provincial factory. A silence unlike the previous ones fell. Heavy, charged. Fournier spluttered. You are telling us, he said, that our affairs have been guided by a waitress? No, Louis said. I am telling you they have been guided by a woman who grew up in a house where investments were made and lost. A woman who watched her family fall when men like us chose to save themselves and let one man carry their ruin. You speak of Duret, Durand said. His voice held a new edge. Yes, Louis said, of Henri Duret and of his daughter. On the other side of the wall, Elise pressed her hand to her chest. Delacroix spoke slowly. You mean to say that Mademoiselle Moreau is Elise Duret? Louis finished. She changed her name after the scandal. She worked, she learned. She listened as men talked carelessly over coffee about their fortunes and others' misfortunes. When I mocked her and asked for her advice, she chose to answer instead of shrinking away. I am the fortunate one in that exchange, not she. Fournier's chair scraped. Have you lost your mind? He demanded. You bring the daughter of a disgraced man into our plans. You expose us to gossip, to suspicion. We are already exposed to suspicion, Louis cut in. The difference is that now our actions are guided by someone who has seen the consequences of our world more clearly than any of us. Her father may have erred, but he was not the only one. I have documents now. Letters, contracts. Paper rustled as he picked up the prepared file. Here, he said, Duret warns certain clients about the risks. He urges caution. Some withdraw quietly, others increase their stakes. When the scheme collapses, he is left holding the blame. Those who stepped aside allow him to fall alone. Convenient, is it not? You cannot accuse us of... Fournier began. I am not accusing all of you, Louis said, but I am stating this plainly. We can no longer pretend that Duret's ruin was entirely his doing. Men profited from his fall. Men who now sit in comfortable chairs and speak of prudence. Durand's voice slipped in, calm and cold. Careful, Beaumont, he said. You tread close to calling me a thief. I am calling you what you are, Louis replied. A man who signed clauses that freed him from risk while urging others to remain. Legal? Yes. Moral? You know that answer better than I. Silence. Delacroix cleared his throat. This is all very stirring, he said slowly. But what is your purpose? Do you intend to drag an old scandal into the papers? That would harm us all. My purpose, Louis said, is to strip Durand of a weapon he believes he holds. He thought he could use Mademoiselle Duret's past to control her, to control me. He cannot. I know now the truth he hoped would remain hidden. If he wishes to stir the ashes, he will find his own fingerprints in them. You threaten me? Durand asked softly. I warn you, Louis answered. If you attempt to smear her name, I will present these documents to every man whose respect you value. I will not need to cry criminal. I will only need to ask them whether they like doing business with someone who ensures his safety by sacrificing those who trusted him. The quiet that followed was deep. From her place in the library, Elise could almost see Durand's jaw clench, though she had only the sound of his breathing to guide her imagination. At last he spoke. You overestimate the sympathy of our circle, Beaumont, he said. They respect winners, not martyrs. And you underestimate their distaste for public ugliness, Louis replied. No one likes to see the tricks behind the magic. We can keep this civil, Baron, or we can let it become entertainment for the boulevard. I know which I prefer. Do you? Durand's answer when it came was taut. What do you want? He asked. For now, Louis said. I want you to leave Mademoiselle Duret out of your games. No whispers, No hints. No polite warnings in dark corridors. You will treat her as what she is, my chosen advisor. If you have complaints about my decisions, bring them to me, not to her good name. And if I decline this generous arrangement? Durand asked. Then we both take our chances, Louis said. But you know as well as I that I have less to lose in that arena than you do. I am already rumored to be reckless. You are known to be careful. Which of us will surprise them more if this story reaches the wrong ears? Delacroix cut in, weary. Enough, he said. We are not boys quarreling in a schoolyard. Baron, do you intend to pursue this, or can we speak of the future instead of the past? Durand was silent for a long moment. Finally, he said, each word weighing more than usual. Very well. I will not mention the matter, not for now. Not ever, Louis corrected calmly. That is the only condition under which I share a table with you from this day. Another small pause. Not ever, Durand said. It was not repentance. It was calculation. But it was enough. Good, Louis said, and his tone shifted. Softer now, because there is one more thing I must tell you all. It concerns that future you mentioned. We are listening, Delacroix said. You have a right to know, Louis said, that I intend to bind my life permanently to the person who has had the greatest influence on my decisions this year. Fournier muttered. Another advisor. No, Louis said. A partner, in the fullest sense. He drew a breath. I have asked for Mademoiselle Elise Duré's hand in marriage, he said, and she has consented. The reaction was immediate. Fournier nearly choked. You cannot be serious. Even Delacroix sat up straighter. Beaumont, Durand's laugh was short and disbelieving. You intend to turn a scandal into a wedding? I intend, Louis said, to honor the person who helped me save the enterprise my grandfather built. I intend to prove in my own house, if not in yours, that merit matters more than birth, and that a tarnished surname can be polished by truth. I intend, he added quietly, not to live a comfortable lie for the sake of men whose respect I no longer value as I once did. You are willing to risk your standing, your invitations, your... Fournier sputtered. My standing, Louis cut in, rests on more than who pours my wine at dinner. It rests on the workers who keep our factories running, on the investors who prefer steady returns to idle gossip, and on my ability to look in the mirror without flinching. I am content to lose the rest. Delacroix exhaled slowly. This is courageous, he said, and perhaps foolish, but it is your life. As long as it does not sink our affairs, my primary concern is your competence, not your choice of bride. Thank you, Louis said. That is all I ask. Fournier grumbled something about madness and the end of the world, but he did not withdraw his support. Durand said nothing. In the library, Elise stood with her back pressed to the wall, pulse hammering. She had not yet given him her formal answer, not in so many words. He had announced it as if it were settled, trusting her more than she trusted herself. The door between the rooms opened wider. Monsieur, Louis said, since we are speaking about her as if she were a ledger to be audited, it is only fair that she be present. His voice shifted, directed now at the library. Elise, he called, will you join us? Her legs felt strangely light and heavy at once. She stepped forward. The small meeting room felt crowded, though only 4 men sat around the table. Delacroix, expression thoughtful. Fournier, red-faced. Durand, composed but with a faint tension at his mouth. Louis stood beside his chair. His gaze did not waver as she entered. Messieurs, he said, may I present Mademoiselle Elise Duré, known to you until now as Mademoiselle Moreau. She inclined her head. Messieurs, she said, keeping her voice even. And this is Count Louis Beaumont's future wife, if she confirms that I did not overstate her consent, Louis added, never taking his eyes from hers. Her breath caught. You have placed me in an awkward position, monsieur, she said softly. Not the first time, he replied. There was a hint of nervousness beneath the light tone. I am learning. Delacroix cleared his throat. Mademoiselle, he said, I confess I did not expect to find myself in this situation, but I have seen the effect of your advice. I cannot deny its value, nor can I deny that it took courage to stand here knowing what some think of your father's name. Some think more of it than they admit, she said quietly. They simply do not say so in public. His mouth curved almost a smile. "If you can speak like that to us," he said, "I suspect the Count will not lack for honesty in his marriage." Fournier looked as if he had swallowed a lemon. "I suppose," he muttered, "that if the plan fails, we will know whom to blame." "If the plan fails," she answered, "you may blame the markets, the politicians, the weather, or me, as you wish. But I would prefer to spend our energy preventing that outcome rather than rehearsing whom to point a finger at." Unexpectedly, a short bark of laughter escaped Delacroix. "I may grow to like her," he said to Louis. Durand had remained silent. Now he spoke, addressing Elise directly. "I hope," he said, "that you understand the magnitude of what you are doing. You are stepping into a world that prefers its sins hidden and its wives quiet." "I have been quiet for many years, Baron," she replied. "It has brought me little but regret. I intend to see whether speaking brings better results." He inclined his head, acknowledging the hit. "For what it is worth," he said, "I wish you a less disastrous marriage than your father's dealings with us proved to be." "That will depend less on fate and more on character," she said. "I am learning to distinguish the two." Something in his expression shifted, not quite respect, but perhaps the recognition a chess player feels when he realizes his opponent is not as weak as he thought. Louis stepped slightly closer to her. "Messieurs," he said, "you now know everything of relevance. You may tell your wives whatever version of this story suits you best. I ask only that in business we remain focused on business. My private life is mine. As long as my decisions continue to be sound, I see no reason for you to object." Delacroix rose, signaling the end of the formal part of the meeting. "I will judge you by your ledgers, not your choice of companion," he said. "So far, the ledgers are improving. I will stay." Fournier grudgingly agreed. Durand offered a non-committal comment and made his exit without another word to Elise. The door closed behind the last investor. Silence settled over the room like a held breath. Louis turned to her fully now. "I am not entirely sure whether I handled that brilliantly or catastrophically," he admitted. "You handled it as yourself," she said, "and that seems to be working better than the alternative." He exhaled, tension easing from his shoulders. "I will accept that verdict," he said. "Now about the small matter I declared as settled without consulting you properly." She tilted her head. "Ah, yes," she said. "The question of whether I intend to marry you." "That one," he said. "I am at your mercy." She studied his face. The man who had just faced down an investor with old letters now watched her like someone who had placed his heart on the table and stepped back. "You asked me once," she said slowly, "what would happen to me if your plan failed, if we both fell? I have thought about it since. I realized that I have already fallen once with my father. I survived. What I did not have then was someone who fell with me by choice." He watched her, very still. "You have just chosen," she continued, "to risk your standing for my name, for my truth. You have given me back a piece of my father's honor in a way I could never have done alone." She drew a breath. "I cannot in good conscience leave you to face the rest of the path without me," she said. "That would be a new form of cowardice, and I have had enough of that." His eyes warmed. "Is that your way of saying yes?" he asked. She smiled, small but luminous. "Yes," she said. "It is." He closed the little distance between them. He did not seize her. He simply took her hands, gently, as if they were both something fragile and something strong. "Thank you," he said, voice low. "You have just made every risk worthwhile." Her fingers curled around his. "Do not thank me yet," she replied. "You have not seen how stubborn I can be as a wife." "I look forward to discovering it," he said. He lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles, a gesture both old-fashioned and newly charged. Their eyes held. In that silent exchange, more was said than any vow could capture. Weeks passed. The city gossiped, as it always did, then turned to other topics. There were mutters in certain salons, raised eyebrows in others, but there were also quiet nods from people who remembered their own brushes with ruin and saw in the union of a count and a former waitress something oddly just. On a mild afternoon, under the high ceiling of a small chapel Louis's grandfather had used rarely, they stood side by side. The ceremony was not grand. Louis had insisted on simplicity. A few relatives attended, some with stiff expressions, some with genuine interest. Delacroix was there with his wife and eldest daughter, who smiled shyly at Elise and squeezed her hand. Fournier grumbled about leaving his desk, but stood in the back all the same. Durand did not attend. His absence was noted, then politely ignored. At the front pew sat Madame Besson, hands folded on her lap, eyes suspiciously bright. Beside her, Madeleine from the restaurant dabbed at her nose with a handkerchief. "She looks like herself," Madeleine whispered. "Not like someone playing a part." "That is because she is," Madame Besson replied softly. At last. The priest's words flowed around Louis and Elise like a distant river. They heard only the parts that mattered. To have and to hold, for better or worse, in wealth and in want. Louis's voice was steady as he spoke his vows. "I have already known what it is to risk everything," he said, not reading from the paper in his hand. "I have known what it is to hide my fears behind jokes and fine dinners. Today, in front of you all, I choose a different path. I choose to share my fears and my hopes with the woman who has already walked with me through both. I promise to listen to her wisdom, to honor her courage, and to build a life where no one at our table is there, merely to pour wine and remain silent." A faint ripple of emotion moved through the small crowd. When it was Elise's turn, her hands trembled only slightly. "I have known what it is to fall," she said, voice clear, "to watch walls and certainties crumble. I have known what it is to listen in doorways, unseen, unheard. Today, I step out of the doorway. I choose to stand in the open beside a man who saw me when others looked away, who asked for my mind and then somehow for my heart as well. I promise to remind him that numbers are not people, that decisions have faces, and that even when markets fail, there can be dignity in how we face the loss. I will be his partner in caution and in courage." His eyes shone. He reached for her hands again. When the blessing was spoken, and they were pronounced husband and wife, there was no roar of applause, only a warm swell of sound, clapping, sighs, the rustle of cloth as people stood. Outside the chapel the light was soft. The air carried the smell of horse and stone and the faint sweetness of flowers someone had insisted on bringing. Delacroix approached them as the guests mingled. "Countess Beaumont," he said deliberately with a small bow to Elise, "I expect your counsel to be just as sharp now that you are respectable as it was when you were serving wine." She smiled. "Respectability is an illusion, Monsieur Delacroix. I will not let it dull me." "Good," he said. "We cannot afford that." Madame Besson hugged her with unexpected force. "I always said you were meant for better than my old staircase," she murmured, though her voice wobbled. "Do not forget the way back, mind you. There are still people on that landing who need a clever ear." "I will not forget," Elise promised. "I will send word. Perhaps we can do something more than pay rent for them." "Listen to her," Louis said lightly. "Already planning reforms on our wedding day." "It is your own fault," she replied. "You encouraged me." As the carriage rolled away from the chapel, carrying them toward the house that would now be theirs, they sat close but not quite touching, aware of the small space that seemed charged between them. "You are quiet," he said. "I am listening," she answered. "To what?" "To the sound of my name," she said. "In my head. It is different now." "How does it sound?" he asked. She looked at him. "Like something I chose," she said. "Not something given to me or taken from me." He reached for her hand. This time he did not hesitate. She let their fingers interlace, the gesture easy, as if it had been years rather than hours. "You know," he said, "we have accomplished something rather extraordinary." "Saving your company?" she asked. "That as well," he said. "But I was thinking of this. We have taken a jest and turned it into a life." Her lips curved. "I suppose we have," she agreed. "And all because you refused to laugh at my joke," he added. "I refused to be the joke," she corrected. "There is a difference." He laughed softly. "Never let me forget it," he said. "I intend to remind you often," she replied. The carriage turned onto a busy street. People glanced up as it passed. A count and his new countess, another union among many in the restless city. Inside, the two of them sat with hands entwined, bearing with them not only rings and promises, but the memory of humiliation, of loss, of long nights with ledgers and worry, and the choice, repeated now with every breath, to build something new from it all. For those who heard their story later, in drawing rooms or over cheap wine in crowded cafes, it carried a quiet lesson that a careless word spoken in mockery can awaken courage in someone who has been silent too long. That knowledge does not always wear fine clothes. That a fall need not be the end if one day, somewhere in a Paris restaurant or in a life far from it, someone dares to stand up, to speak, to answer a cruel question with unexpected truth. And that sometimes when pride yields to humility and fear yields to trust, a count and a waitress can meet not across a table of polished wood and invisible rules, but on the same side of it. Hands joined, hearts aligned, building a future neither could have imagined alone. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.